I miss having your mouth instruments, Mr. Roberts. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We're live, ALTBAYS show brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. We've been doing this for just over 1 year. How cool. Can we have some claps for this? Thank you very much. There was kind of like a remix there. Did you see? What? This is show number 172, which is pretty cool. We are live streaming now every Tuesday and Thursdays at 7 p.m. So make sure to join our platforms. We live stream on YouTube. So if you are watching us right now, you are on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe, and you can also become a member. You throw some dollars there and you support the team so we can carry on doing the beautiful things that we are doing. This is a podcast, so you will find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all the leading audio platforms. And our media group also publishes this beautiful magazine. If you are listening, you can see the beautiful cover of the Coromine March edition. This is a collaborative project. We invite local artists to feature their work, and we invite cool people from the whole Coromando to share their thoughts and to teach. We are learning that educational content really attracts people, and community growth really matters for us. So we are accepting people to put their hands up if they're keen to add some cool content for our magazine. Same for our advertisers. We are lucky that our advertisers understand that this is a free magazine. So if you want to put an ad, we are very thankful. If you want to provide some educational content, even better. Okay, so keep in touch, coromines.nz. There's an audio version, of course, because accessibility matters. And on my left, I have Mr. Roberts. Hi.
How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I just saw the cover there with Peter Augustine, who came onto our show. Must have been in the 150s or so.
Something like that, yes.
Pretty great person. I went to his studio. I took the kids over. Went to have a look at some artwork being made. Nope. He sprayed his paint with a water sprayer. Took us into his house, gave the kids drinks, cookies, biscuits, wanted to talk. Had about an hour's hangout with Peter, and Peter, it's great.
Really?
And then finally, at the very end, maybe we'll do a bit of art.
Nice.
So what an experience. What a man. What a team.
He's a good man. You're right. And I was wondering if he freaked out when he saw you bringing a lot of kids to his studio. That's why he was like, nah.
He was very happy and wanted to show, because obviously my daughter is very keen artist.
Shout out.
Anytime she was struggling, he said, brilliant, embrace the struggle and do it 100,000 times. Keep going and find that struggle and use it. And it was quite beautiful. She really enjoyed watching him.
That's good to hear. Mr. Roberts, it's a very talented musician and a top teacher. We're lucky to have him at the Mercury Bay Area School.
Shucks.
Please, no. And my question for him is, do you pay attention to your breathing, my friends, while teaching, talking to kids, and doing your thing in life? Honestly, don't lie. I just got it, eh?
So when I breathe, when I come onto this show, I focus on my breathing so that I can not have to breathe in the middle of a sentence, which is an irritating thing. When I sleep, breathing is really frustrating to me because of my ears and my inability to stop listening. I put on white noise to block out sound because I don't want to hear it.
You're one of those guys.
I can hear the blood in my ears when I'm in a quiet room. It's frustrating. It's horrible. It's insane. So I don't lie on my side. I sleep on my back like basically Dracula. It's a great feature and a great thing to be a part of my life.
Wow.
So in essence, do I focus on breathing? Yeah, I breathe silently and clearly because I'm always on my back, happily.
It sounds like your breathing freaks you out a little bit, though. I think we have to go through this trauma, my friend. I think tonight's the night.
I could do with some work on my breathing because as a young student of singing back in the day, I learned that a good breath, you shouldn't be heard. There you go. I just breathed in fully, and hopefully you didn't hear that. On the audio-based platform, your ears may be more pricked and sensitive, but otherwise in the video, you should look at my good looks and not focus on my breathing.
Thanks for sharing that. The reason why I started with this topic is because tonight we have the pleasure to have Mr. Stephen LeFebvre.
Stephen LeFebvre.
Stephen LeFebvre with a V. Where's the name from, LeFebvre?
It's French.
It's French.
LeFebvre in French.
LeFebvre.
It means the bean.
Oh, it suits you.
You know,
Oh, the bean, you mean the food or the bean, human being?
No, the bean.
Oh,
I
the
should
bean.
say,
Oh, damn.
the Latin
That's cool.
origin of my name is Fabian, which is bean grower.
That's it.
I am bean
You got
grower.
it. We're connected. We're connected.
What a collab.
Absolutely. By the way, the breath is, as you know, absolutely incredibly important to singing and voice. It's all about the breath.
All your control.
Yeah. It's and you know, with dreams, like the problem you're having with, they used to put people away for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Before we dive deep into this beautiful
Thanks,
conversation,
Stephen. Thank you, mate.
that's us for tonight. I just want to say thank you very much to our awesome supporter here tonight. Lot of love, plant-based cooking. So Tanya brought us good foods. Not for Mr. Roberts because he's not a coriander fan. Sorry.
The naans look fantastic.
The naan was looking
They did,
fantastic.
yeah.
Delicious.
So she made a coconut and lentil soup. I put in a story on our Instagram if you want to check it out. And there's also the hashtag to follow Tanya on Instagram. And we're going to have the logo on our screen. So if you're watching us, make sure to check it out. I've been plant-based for pretty much 6 years now, and I don't preach veganism, but I must say
Anymore.
that it was not anymore. I'm learning. You know, people do whatever they want to do. I do like to say though that it's been a great thing for my life. I feel very good, and I appreciate people who do what Tanya is doing, teaching how to heal through good food. So make sure to check her out. How was the food, Stephen?
Excellent. And I was a vegetarian for 25 years.
Oh, do I sense a past tense there?
Yeah, no, because you know, now I eat a little chicken, a little fish. I have not eaten red meat since 1969. You know, and with the exception that my Italian grandmother, I'd eat anything she put in front of me because it was holy darshan, and so she had the exception. But and I just felt a lot better. And there was one point in my life where all I ate was fruit. That was it.
Oh,
But that was when I was living in a monastic way. So I didn't have to do a real lot. You know, it was a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, and that. So you didn't need a lot of energy to.
I'm curious as to
Mr. Roberts, do you want to do
Oh, my
this quickly
goodness.
for us? Because a friend asked me, she was like, I know that you put a description on the show, but sometimes we don't read the description. Can you tell a little bit more about the guest before you start? So I have the pro reader from the Coromine magazine to say some words about Stephen, our guest. Go for it, my man.
Welcome to ALTBAYS. Stephen is a certified breathwork practitioner with New Zealand Association of Breathworkers, a personal and business consultant, and a certified breathworker in the ISLP in the US of A. He has been studying, teaching, and working professionally as a breathworker and as a consultant since 1989, 2 years before I was born. Stephen spent much of his adult life studying spiritual psychology with masters from different spiritual traditions: Benedictines, Hindu, Buddhist, and North American Indian. He is a former yoga and meditation teacher, vipassana meditation practitioner, founder of the Southbury Wellness Clinic, nutritionist, men's group founder, avid gardener, and music lover. There's a lot of good words in here.
I'm out of breath.
And as a past founder and managing director of several successful companies in the nutraceutical industry, he also consults with businesses to bring more effective communications and an understanding of how mindfulness contributes to a more effective, sustainable, and profitable business. Can I jump on that last bit there?
Sure.
With the idea of profitable, sustainable, a modern business? Is this the idea about taking traditions of how businesses and how different fields in the world have worked and bringing it to a modern sense of what's relevant now, what's good now, what's healthy now for business, and trying to, zhuzh things up and get out of what might be an autocratic or a historically rigid system?
It's actually much simpler than that.
Oh, take me.
Yeah, it's simply taking the greed and the single focus on profit.
And growing this?
Yeah, and evolving it to where, companies begin to start being equally concerned about taking care of their people that work for them, taking care of the planet and the environment, taking care of vision and their purpose, being able to also shift the energy from competitiveness to collaboration, being able to look to find the qualities and the inspiration from their employees and bringing it to the whole. So rather than just pigeonholing people, you're actually looking to find the best. And this is being done. And what they're doing, the companies, which, by the way, it's interesting because in the Scandinavian area, there's lots of companies that are beginning to do this, and they're becoming exceptionally more profitable. I mean, you can have similar companies in an industry where conscious business is being applied, and they're just so much more successful. And you have Patagonia, you have different companies that are really beginning to embrace this. And it really starts with applying a more enlightened consciousness, which has got to start at the top.
That's what I was wondering. Like, so the work, it's mainly at the top, at the work would be focused on the people who hold power. Would that be a good start to
Absolutely.
understand this process?
Yeah, I mean, it's most effectively that way. I mean, often you'll get uprisings in the tribe, so to speak, that forces management and the chief to make shifts. But it's usually when you can get the chief to become more aware and conscious. So what I call it waking up. And the waking up has got to happen almost experientially. It's not something that most businesses is run from the mortal mind, the thinking mind, the egoic mind. And what we're inviting people to in the conscious business process is to open up to understanding that the real solutions to the problem come from within and not from the mind, and how to access the inspirational aspect of functioning.
I got to say, that seems like a really interesting perspective to come to the table right now, because as you may know, in New Zealand right now, there's a union strike, PPTA, NZEI, the primary school union. Seems like an old form of pushback against the central control or power or the person in charge to make those changes for the better. Unions giving the 5-day work week, maternity leave, sick leave, those things that right now we think, of course, it's sensible as a conscious experience, going, that makes everyone happier, better, safer, more secure in themselves in employment. So you're moving from a sense of the unions may not be necessary if there was a way to impart a different business model or a different value incentive-based thinking. Is that generally, could that be applied to this sort of, because obviously education is a huge industry, tens of thousands of people all involved in it. Can this type of thinking be applied to something so large?
Absolutely. I mean, what ends up happening in these situations is that you will come up with a structure that can be taken throughout the organizations. And it's really more about first identifying the vision. What is it that the company, what is it the education department really wants? You know, what's the goals here? Is it really educating children? And then having input by all, starting with the students as well, teachers, administrators, and having them coming together and having conscious conversations. And when we talk about conscious conversations, I mean, I work with a group weekly from people, business people from all over the world. And, you know, if you can think of a board of directors coming in, and the first thing they do is they're sitting and meditating for 2 or 3 minutes in silence. That's the beginning. And then a prompt or a problem or an issue is put on the table. And the response to that problem is not coming from their egoic mind. It's coming from what's happening within their heart. And that's what gets shared. And the creative process, and any artist knows this, you know, I mean, the what's coming through us, if you're singing, if you're playing music, playing a sport, when the mortal mind, when the thinking mind is set aside, and you're allowing that to flow, if you can actually bring that to a board of directors. And that's a challenge, because up until now, all businesses are really run on ego. Mm. So the administrators in the education, the different levels of management, all are invested, you know, in having certain ways, so they get credit for it, they get the money for it, whatever it is. How do you set that aside so now your focus and your goal is on the values you want to bring these kids? And that's a different conversation.
Do you believe that it's possible to change a lot of behavior even for older people, or we should be focusing more on groundwork and focusing on the youth and trying to prepare the upcoming generation?
Now, here's an example here in New Zealand. There's a wonderful, wonderful man, Nathan Wallace. He's a neuroscientist here in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in some seminars that he did, and it was in regard to children that really had some serious challenges, and how do we handle that, you know? And as he was sharing how the mind of children are formed, how they were brought up, the environment in which they live in, etc., they come into a school, and they're thrown into 30, 40 kids, whatever it is, and all of a sudden they're functioning from the limbic brain, the fear, flight, freeze. And when we react from that place, it can be very devastating. It's anger, it's holding back. And so we talked about how do you change that brain? Because the brain is formed by the time we're 3 years old, and it doesn't change. And so when they took and they do brain scans of, for instance, children in orphanages or people in prisons, they see that this formation of staying in the limbic brain, the primary part of the brain, hasn't moved. It hasn't gotten into the frontal cortex, which is where our mindfulness, compassion, right thinking is formed from. And so there's only one thing that changes that, and that's love. That's nurturing. So in schools where they can begin to start having some of these kids that are really problem kids, having someone that they can speak to and talk to, and someone that they can trust, and someone that can begin to nurture them, and then hold them every year, that person is available to them. Those kids are beginning now to really flourish because they come from homes often where you're not having a lot of nurturing. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of trauma. And so this is a way in which as schools, as businesses begin to see how things can be done differently, that can become very, very productive and efficient in a loving way. This is what we're wanting to do. That's what consciousness is all about, you know.
What can we apply from, you spent a lot of time with indigenous people, I would say, like you were mentioning before, that you did some studies and you also traveled a lot, meeting people who live in a different way, more natural. Yes?
Can I, before you go to this topic, can I just make a question?
Of course.
Because you said about the jail system and that they don't change, right? Because probably they're not receiving love, right? That probably would be one of the... How can you tell the population that we should be giving love to like murderers or people who are doing bad on society?
The first thing is, why is a murderer a murderer? You know, I mean, this goes back to what is it that creates this violent attitude in them? There's some very basic things that if you look at the history of people that are really violent and whatever. I mean, they generally come from very abusive backgrounds or very needy backgrounds. So, and I've worked in the prisons, you know, and so it's being able to, I mean, there's people that go in and they do yoga now, they do meditation, they do mindfulness training, they're giving them ways in which they can educate themselves, and where prison systems are doing that, the recidivism is much, much, much lower. You know, you can have someone that goes into jail, and they're better off. And this will sound strange, but they're better off in jail. They got 3 square meals a day. They got a job. They got a uniform they're wearing every day. They go out on the streets and they're struggling. So you'll find the recidivism is really high because they go on the streets. It's almost, that's the vacation. And they go back to jail. And that sounds strange, but that's the reality. You know, so how do you change that? So you have to change as in a company or as in a family to make it more nurturing, make it so that these guys can, and some of them you're not going to change. You know, you're just not going to change, okay? But you work with what you can, and you try to create models that have been shown to be really good. There's a SAVA Foundation, which Dr. Richard Alpert, or better known as Ramdas, used to go into prisons and just to sit and talk. I mean, often just setting up formats where these guys are heard and seen. Because in most cases, people that are in this, no one's ever really listened to them. You know, they really haven't had the opportunity to have a conscious conversation with anybody. You know, and so all of a sudden they're able to share and talk what's going on. It can be a change, and that's not just for people in prisons. That's for everybody. You know, especially kids, and especially teens, because I've worked with teens. You know, just for someone to sit with them and listen to them, not try to change them, not telling them what to do and where they're right, where they're wrong. Just listening to them. That can heal. You
mentioned Ramdas. Where were you at that time of that boom of the consciousness and a lot of trials and people just rediscovering, you know, like there was a lot going. And you were from America. You were born in America. So what was happening? Where were you?
I was laying down on the highway, stopping the traffic for Vietnam. You know, I mean, my hair was down on my ass. You know, and. You know, it was a very interesting time. I mean, I got to know Ramdas and spent some time with him, and he was absolutely brilliant. He was a mentor of mine because he had the capacity to share very complex spiritual processes in a way that anybody can understand them. And, you know, it was brilliant. And he was very, very funny guy. He had an incredible master. And back in those days, there was a certain freedom that existed and that was invited, whether it was in music or art or in so much. And in that period of time, which we look at now as the time of the hippies, it's changed marketing, it's changed business, it's changed so much because of what happened during that period of time. For me, it was an invitation to go into a very deep spiritual process. And Ramdas, and I studied with an amazing master, Satchidananda. He was the man that opened up Woodstock. And it began that where my journey was more an inner journey than it was an outer journey. And my business and all the business stuff that I've been involved with was part of what we call right livelihood. It's a way of doing business. I was in natural foods and natural medicines, and it was a way in which, through business, because business is the most powerful vehicle for changing, because everybody works for somebody. You know, business is involved in everything, so if we can change the consciousness of that. So how I operated my businesses was trying to be as conscious as I can, you know, and when I failed in terms of how I did what I did, I tried to learn. I always surrounded myself with people that were willing to tell me the truth. You know, I may not have liked it, but I learned great.
And it's hard, eh? Yeah. It's hard to tell the truth sometimes to someone. Sometimes you prefer saying nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, when you were a kid, okay, and this is where these patterns show up. It's like, you know, when I grew up, if I told the truth, something bad was going to happen. I was going to get beaten, you know, I was going to get rejected, ignored, or whatever. So, you know, you have that in the back of your head. And that's how the work that I do now with the breath is helping individuals let go of those limiting thoughts and to own our magnificence and to realize that we are absolutely divine souls in these bodies and that we've come here with purpose. And now, today, in this time and age, we all have to show up. We have to let go of the limiting thoughts. And, you know...
Can I jump right in on there? Because so limiting thoughts has come up about 3 times in passing, and I really want to target it. So if we were to say start from children, adults, or people high up in, you know, in age and in business and in wealth and value based on society, what are these limiting thoughts? What are some examples of a limiting thought that would have, say, an impact on these different sort of brackets?
Yeah, and by the way, they stay with you forever. I mean, until you work with them. I'm not good enough. I'm not wanted. I'm guilty. You know, I'm unworthy. I mean, and then what happens, because thought's creative and you are the thinker, if you keep thinking it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel through an eye of a needle, you know, you have all these negative thoughts about, for instance, having money. Or if you have the thought that no matter what I do, it's not going to be good enough, we will prove that to ourselves. And that's how we function in the world. So how do we get how do we lose these limiting thoughts? That's a really powerful process. And I can almost sum it up in my own experience working with people over 40 years. And this goes to the manifestation of those negative thoughts is cancer. It's heart disease. It's so much of our physical bodies, okay? Forgiveness and completion. To forgive ourselves, forgive our others is a most powerful way to heal, because forgiveness has to do with learning to have compassion and love for ourselves first. My master used to say, the only thing you can be selfish about is your own peace of mind. If you don't have that, you got nothing to give anybody. And if you are at peace, every single soul you come in contact with, you'll impart something very real to them. So that is your responsibility, to find your peace. And when I work with people, one of the first questions I ask them is, how do you nurture yourself? And you'd be surprised that people can't come up with one or two things. You know, how do we love ourselves? It's doing the things that make us feel really good. You know, whether that's surfing, dancing, music, it's hanging out with our kids or our grandkids, it's making love, it's walking on the beach.
I like this. Can we apply this, Leo? How do you nurture yourself?
I wanted to say, and I will answer your question by telling a very short story. When I came to New Zealand, I lived in Auckland for 9 months, and then I got a job in Whitianga, which was inspiring, and it was a good time because it was summer, so it was busy, it was fun. And then maybe 3 months in, I realized that it was dead, and that was it. But I was on a mission to get a work visa, so I had a reason to stay. However, it was tough to spend a winter here because it was very quiet. And then summer was back again, and then I was happy again, and then I had another crash on the following winter. But during that journey, I realized that a lot of people that came that I met, they wanted to live here, and they left. They were just like, oh, this is not for me, this is not for me. And that was in my mind a lot. This is not for me. I can't be part of this place so quiet, and this is so hard. But I had a reason to stay. I was enjoying my job. I was connecting with nature in a way that I had never done before. And I'm glad I went through that, because then I started to realize that I was attached to a lifestyle, and my normal was chaos in a big city. So I thought I was okay. And then the more time that I spent here, I realized that this is much more normal and makes much more sense. So I've been trying to tap into the things that make me feel good, which most of the time is just like spending 15 minutes in the sun if that's what I get in my busy day. But I do it intentionally, and I do my breathing. I don't have to go for a super long walk, which I love, but if I intentionally do 5 minutes, I'm fulfilled with that. But what I wanted to ask you, asking a question now, adding a question to that, how do we identify these patterns in that lifestyle that I was taking before? Because a lot of people might be listening to us and saying, listen to these guys from the Coromandel, New Zealand, the paradise on earth, you know, like so easy to be mindful. Thank you very much. Nice to be, easy to be, maybe not easy, but maybe easier to be aware of things when it's peaceful and there's nature, there's no traffic. How do we do it when we're not even aware of how much noise and lights and people are causing an impact to our going back to ourselves and diving deep within? Oof.
Wow.
It's pretty big.
Well,
I tried to summarize it.
we were chatting about this earlier. Why do you think the virus, the COVID came? Why do we have climate crisis? Why do we have political crisis? Why do we have race crisis? Why do we have gender crisis? It's to wake people up. So whether you're in Auckland, Beijing, whether you're in New York City, okay, you have to make the choice of what is meaningful for you. Is being at peace meaningful for you? Is being happy meaningful for you? And what you were just talking about, taking the 5 minutes, that's cultivating discipline. To make that, say that. It's like for me, every single day, I'm going to do at least 1 or 2 things that makes me feel good. That may be just for me eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know? I mean, it's what are those little things that I can do walking on the beach. But if I'm in the city, okay, it might be listening to a lovely piece of music. It might be putting on YouTube and listening to Leo. It might be listening to great comedy, or it might be listening to The Voice, and to me, great comedians, where I can laugh. I can be depressed and I can be in despair, and I can listen to a great comedy and I'm laughing, and it shifts that energy. And acknowledging that shift is there, being aware. I think that the one of the basic things is not being afraid of being still, not being afraid of winter. If you can begin to cultivate that ability to just be quiet, even for 5 minutes, and to allow yourself to feel what's going on in your body, recognizing when pain arises, when depression arises, and then not pushing it away, but allowing it. Buddha used to talk about Mara. That is the energy of fear and anger, and to invite it in, become friends with it, okay? And then investigate it. Why am I feeling this pain? Why am I feeling this anger, this despair? Because you're going to find it's just a thought.
Because it's already not great. And if you're fighting, then you have two problems.
Yeah, yeah. And then the most important part after that is the nurturing. How do I nurture myself through my depression? So if you begin to start putting into your life the things that make you feel good, and that could be just being in service to someone else. That will actually makes me feel good to help somebody else. It's like the work that you guys are doing here, bringing people, artists that can, it helps them, it makes you feel good. So one of the best ways that we can nurture ourselves is to find our passion and act on it. Ask others for help and support.
I think something that we also have the benefit of doing, and you've obviously experienced, is helping somebody as a teacher when a student wants help with something and they suddenly get something and you're like, oh, yes, you've got it, you understand it, you've learned it, you've developed the skill, you're now able to do it and repeat it again and again, and they feel a sense of satisfaction. Oh, that is the bliss. It's the only reason I teach.
That's it. I mean, that's exactly it. And so when I talked earlier about when we're aligned with where our passion is in our life and we are acting on it in our world, that's the result, the joy. That's why when I work with clients working with the breath, it is the most satisfying thing to watch people just blossom and find their portal to their, and I'll use the term, divinity, to their God, to their inspiration, to their own magnificence, and just watch them light up, shift their life. There isn't anything better. The only thing better is, I think, when we show up for each other and invite each other to learn and to understand what unconditional love is. And as a teacher to a child, when we just can take those moments to be really present with them. So when they do something that's good, we let them know how it's made us feel, and then say, how does it make you feel? So when they know that, when they begin to understand that when they are coming into something that's happening in their life and they're feeling really good about it, that's right for them. And it's a challenge for teachers today.
I'd love to jump in to a really cool and very strange and foreign thing to me. What the heck, if I may use such profanity, what the heck is breathwork and breathing as an activity? What is physically going? Because you've talked about seeing people blossom and breathing. The opposite, I think, is someone falling over, red-faced, and sort of, gets a bit haggard. What is it? What is breathing? Take me to the physical phenomena, please.
Yeah. First of all, we all understand that we have to breathe to survive. Okay, if we can't go but just a very short period of time not breathing before we die. So it's a natural thing. The breath, as we use it in breath work, and there's a lot of different aspects of breath work, is using the breath in a manner that you're breathing at a very fast pace, really fully. The inhale is I'm breathing in life. The exhale is about letting go. And you're doing that for a period of time. And what happens is the oxygen activates the cells in the body. So there's a lot of energy you're feeling, tingly. There's people have all kinds of experiences from just seeing colors. It may activate sadness in you. It may act laughter. It can bring up, and probably the most important thing when we talk about shedding limiting thoughts, cellular memory is held from birth. So even when we're in the womb.
That sounds like a contentious thought. Take me through it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when I first started doing breathwork, these were more intuitive experiences. Now they're scientifically shown. So breathwork now is called peri and prenatal psychology. It's actually Jungian therapy in action. And so, but it is about releasing the limiting thoughts which are held in the cells of our body. And as that happens, because thought's creative, we can let the negative thoughts go and we shift and we change. In a session, no two sessions are ever the same. So you can be in tears for a half an hour. In one session, you can be laughing your ass off. In another one, the one thing I can say is that when you finish a session, you feel like you've been meditating for an hour. You know, you're so calm, you're so at peace, no matter what was going on. But the whole point of breath work, as is meditation or any modality, okay, is to get connected again with your source. That's the point of it. Because it's in that space, in that quiet, in that stillness, that everything was revealed to us. And it may sound spiritual, but it's actually just simply, that's who we are. And I think that the breath work allows someone to go into that inner journey and see how extraordinary we are. And rather than what we're hearing from the outside, you know, I'm not good enough, you're being judged, all this stuff.
Can I poke at this idea for a while?
Sure.
So we're human beings. We have these brains that allow us to have these sorts of thoughts, which is really fun. Why don't animals get the ability to think how amazing they are? Is it not sort of our brain creating an illusion of, yeah, we are great. Yes, we can breathe and we can feel this inner sense of experience that's amazing, that's unique. Is it unique to humans? Are we putting ourselves on a pedestal that we can have such a neurological ecstasy? Is it because we just happen to have the opposable thumbs and have developed so much further? Or is this prevalent anywhere else in nature? Or I'm sort of trying to get, why are we so special? Why do we get to feel so special and enjoy the benefits of this?
Because we have a thinking mind. But to go to your say, where the animal is just absolutely in the moment. They don't have the egoic nature. And when you talk to somebody, whether an artist, a musician, somebody that's in sports, where are they best when they're not thinking, when they're not in that thinking mind? They get into the zone. They're just, the art is coming through them, the music is coming through them. And so that's the place where we are most naturally ourselves. The egoic mind, which is part of our thinking process, and as we've developed as human species, has allowed us to manage our environment. And I think that from my perspective, we're very slow learners. I mean, evolution just takes way too long for me. I mean, when you think about it, mankind's been around for hundreds of thousands of years where they're thinking, and obviously longer, but we haven't got too far. We're still mired in survival, fear, greed, sex, all what we would call the lower chakras. We haven't moved much from that. The animal is just there. They are. They're not thinking about the different space.
For someone who tapped into the nutraceuticals, nutraceuticals, for so long, so I'm going to ask you to explain what that is, and I also want your take on if that contributed and it still contributes to the way that we are evolving. I'm a big fan of the stoned ape theory. Have you heard about that one?
No.
I think who was that, Salem? Who was the guy who? Terence McKenna. He's.
Oh, I'm very familiar with Terence McKenna.
Cool. So he talks about that the time that it was very, the earth was very susceptible for, the climate was great for mushrooms, and for the growth of mushrooms. And then a lot of those mushrooms were psychedelics, and then apes consumed a high amount of that. There's a whole theory behind that. I don't want to get into details because I actually don't know much, but he says that. Fabian, could you just tie that up at the top there? Oh, thank you. So that's one of the things that he mentions of like how Earth, how what nature provides affects our consciousness and the way that we think and the way that we evolve. So if you don't mind explaining what the nutraceuticals are, and if you believe that the power that we have from nature interferes in the way that we are evolving.
Yeah. Yes. But even before that, I mentioned this. Thich Nhat Hanh, a wonderful Buddhist master, talks about interbeing. The fact that as humans, we are connected to all of life. And as humans, we're so detached from that today. We're not cognizant of that relationship. And animals are just intuitively in that space all the time. They know what to eat. They don't have to be asked. They don't have to. The ability to have this stillness that we talk about. When I was working in the nutraceutical industry, and we were talking about this earlier, how do we know what plants, botanicals? Most of our pharmaceutical drugs are coming from botanicals, and they extract specific molecules that do certain things. And how do they know? Okay, when I worked with indigenous people and talked to their shamans and the people that really understood nature, they would go out and they had a relationship from being in that presence. They could feel the plant. They'd find the plant in the jungle. They'd sit down next to it. They would ask the plant, how do I use this? They would be told. They would go back and into their villages, and that's how they began to start using these things. And to incredible, effectiveness. And so that ability to bring those plant substances into the marketplace is what I did for many years. And it's very challenging because pharmaceutical companies don't like this because it interferes with their profit line. And so therefore there's many challenges in that. But that's what we focused on. And as an example, you talked about mushrooms. I was very involved with the maitake mushroom, which is indigenous to Japan, but it's found pretty much everywhere now. But that's a very, very powerful immune stimulant. We actually got that material into Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which is probably the premier cancer establishment in the world. And it was the first time they used a natural product. Found it very effective for breast cancer. And so these nutraceuticals are natural products that were studied and then brought to market. Another one that we worked with was a grapeseed extract. It's really, really good for macular degeneration, for so many things. Saw palmetto for prostate issues. There's many, many, many things like this. And what the challenge is when you have profit, and this goes back to conscious business again, where companies will do everything they can to stymie this, to not allow these products into the market because it undermines their profitability and the products that they're working with. But God gave us everything that we need to heal, And
can I possibly jump in here? Because there's a few points and layers that came on. The God layer there just came in at the end, but I'm going to shuffle that aside for now. You talked about, say, your time before the show. You talked about your time in South America with various shamans in Peru and finding out various cultural norms or people that have studied and spent time independent of the scientific method, and they've found out and determined certain plants and their properties and how they can use them. Now, I want to pounce on that with an argument, and I'd love you to respond to it in a genius way, which you're doing so far. Surely, through trial and error, the knowledge would have come through generations before now where the benefits would have come from these plants. And that shamans right now, they are basically piggybacking off 100 generations of people who have tried every plant to try and cure that scratch with 99,000 people dying, but 1,000 people surviving off one plant, and they go, okay, surely this is just an old-fashioned form of the scientific method. This is the plant that helps with this type of infection. Surely the whole model or explanation of, no, we spent time and we approached it through meditation and it told us what it would do and we used it, is surely a straw man or an easily something you could push aside as an argument going, but surely your shaman, I don't know the hierarchy of shamans when you train, but surely there's a master and an apprentice equivalent through that practice. Surely they're just inheriting trial and error as with most cultures on earth. Is there some way that argument could push back on the spiritual, meditative knowledge gained?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm certain that.
Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is, there's trial and error is always going to be a thing. But what the shamans that I've worked with, okay, and earlier before we came on air, we talked about the fact that one of the points we brought shamans into an environment, a bunch of research scientists, and who these shamans knew nothing of the protocols that they were working with, and was able to tell them what these plants did, which kind of blew them away, because how would they know? And to specifics, and even went beyond that and told them what else they're good for, which they didn't even know. And I think that, as I said, most pharmaceutical drugs have come from botanical extracts. So it's not that we didn't know, but how do you make money on them? That's where things got really, what's happened is they've isolated molecules which they could patent and nobody else can have. And now, for instance, in the U.S., if you're using insulin, it costs you $1,200 a month or whatever it is, and it's like because they control that. And whereas these guys that are in the jungles, I mean, they're just giving it away. I mean, it's available to everybody if they know what they're doing. And so what you're finding is that throughout the world now, there is a much greater availability of this information. And so natural medicines like this are now being prevalent. There's still a lot of pushback, and you see it all the time with drug companies not allowing something like tryptophan, which is an amino acid, to even be on the market because it's interfering with their profitability. But I think that the other side of this is that the younger generations don't want to take the time and the energy to learn these practices, and you see that everywhere, because it takes that ability to be still, to know, to be able to know these kinds of truths and what is needed in order to develop the understanding and the knowledge and the wisdom. And, I think it's actually coming back now. We certainly see it in Native American culture, where the younger people coming up now are beginning to really have that appreciation for that. I think you're seeing it in Maori as well.
I wanted to
jump
ask
on that, yeah.
Do you want to go? Do you want me to?
Well,
I have something, but if you want to.
There's a big thing with Manoriti Mataranga Māori. There's been a big thing in the paper with Dawkins, and I think Elon Musk even commented on it. The idea of Maori knowledge being, or Maori traditional knowledge with nature or with the sciences, having a particular body of knowledge that isn't necessarily transferable to another culture or community or time. And I've seen all sorts of weird sort of straw man arguments from every side of it going, well, there were no viruses, for example, in New Zealand before white people came, so Mātauranga Māori probably wouldn't have a body of knowledge to do with viruses. But of course, the local botanicals, Māori medicine is clearly a real thing. When I was in the Cook Islands, Cook Island Māori medicine was a very real thing, and they'd rip something off a plant and put it on your bee sting, and you go, thank you, I feel perfect again. So there's definitely value and truth to it. Have you noticed a change in this, or is that piggyback on something you were thinking about? The local, as in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the local knowledge that was here before sort of settlers came over, it's valuable, it's real. Does it fit? Does it mesh? Does it need to be separate? Where's your thoughts on that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I think there are now major schools of natural medicine that take on as much knowledge from anywhere that they can find it. I think that within a, like for instance here in New Zealand, I would certainly want to know those in that culture that had that knowledge, because if I were to get sick, I'd want to be able to talk to somebody that has that knowledge. I think the challenge comes in, which comes over colonization of control, and anything that is, indigenous has got to be just, not the right thing. And it's, I'm a white guy and I got my brain, I got my diploma, I got whatever. So what do you know? And that's being dispelled now. I mean, you're actually finding now, like for instance, in the U.S., trying to find some solutions to people that are on opioid addiction, et cetera. And what are they going back to? Microdosing. Ayahuasca, they're, using mushrooms, they even stifle the research with a lot of these things. And again, it's why. It's because how do I make money if I don't control? And I think that knowing, I'm not that familiar with Maori medicine, but I can tell you they're going to know through the generations of, as you said earlier, of handing down what the cures are. The thing is, I think that even modern Maori, Native American, many, they've been over the generations now, are just kind of going back to, the medicine that is available to them. You don't see a lot of practitioners using it.
Can I jump over to Mr. Brazil over here? What do you know about your original cultures, say before, who came through and took away? The Portuguese came and took over the country. So pre-Portuguese, what medicine or practice or health or knowledge is there left?
I don't know much because, as Stephen said, there is work that is still ongoing, work to get rid of that knowledge. That is still working being done to exterminate
the
indigenous
current
people.
Brazilian space is saying,
Still.
let's not...
Even worse, so like they want to get rid of the people. They want, we have to reallocate these people, and reallocating them means providing a different lifestyle for them, which one might argue that is good because it's inclusive, but we can see malicious ways of also letting go of their culture. When you want to implement someone to a new lifestyle, you got to check first. You got to go and see what's going on. Maybe where they are in their land, it's where they should be, because they're bringing something of value for a whole environment that they're keeping it alive. Not like, as we mentioned before, destroying the Amazon to grow something. So if you can keep those people there and keep them with their knowledge, it will feed more people. But Brazil had, unfortunately, because of slavery, but we still had big influence coming from Africa. It was the country that brought 40% of the slaves at the time. So we have this massive Latin African influence in the country. So a lot of culture comes from Africa, which is beautiful because then we learn more about the foods and the medicines that are so present. But funny enough, from a different point of view, not from a local one, maybe coming from somewhere else.
I had a natural food store in New Haven, Connecticut, which is where Yale is. And I sold probably 150 different kinds of botanicals in that store. And I used to watch these black women come in every week, buying stuff all the time. And, I finally pulled one of them aside and I said, what are you guys doing in here all the time buying stuff, And basically she said to me, listen, we're the doctors in our communities. We don't have the money to be running to a doctor buying prescription drugs and stuff like that. We are the doctors. And this is the prescriptions that we give out. They had that knowledge of what these different herbs. I learned so much about botanicals from these women who were just brilliant. And so the need is first, in other words, for especially people that don't have the means and whatever. But I think also this is all about money. I see corporations, and we were working in South America and Peru, corporations, they want their land. So they'd go into these indigenous tribes, they'd give them a TV and an antenna and try to make them happy and basically steal their land.
Spread disease.
That's it. And now what's happening There are now institutions in different places on the planet that are going back into those jungles, trying to find these botanicals that we were talking about and save them because they're being eliminated.
Have you heard that story of a group that got caught going after the feces of a tribe because of the bacteria that they would have because they were so pure in their diets? And now we have these treatments that you can actually feed someone like, with feces that will help the bacteria. There's a great Vice documentary on that, and they were they were going after the tribes,
right,
just to get the bacteria. How?
No, but what I will say, and I think it's so important. It's like here in New Zealand, Maori hold the spirit of this land. Indigenous peoples, and I've worked with indigenous people in China, the Mao and the Yao, same thing. And in the U.S., there's the Native Americans, but the respect for them is not great. Here in New Zealand, I think there's a greater respect for indigenous Maori than probably anywhere I've seen in the world in terms of their indigenous people. It's beginning to change, and I'm also beginning to see these indigenous folks coming together. And there's been a number of conferences where they hold the spirit of this globe. And as we begin to allow and to listen to them, and the UN is beginning to do this, and inviting them to speak so that they can be heard. That helps to ground the energy.
I know that Taylor wants to say something, but I just want to play devil. Do you want to ask something on the subject?
No, I was just making a comment because Fabian talked about the Brazilian culture and like, I don't know Leo's family because he has an Italian family, so I have some Brazilian indigenous descendants, and my grandmother, she knew every herb and she would be doing teas for anything you had. So it would be like stomach, she would know the herb. Hangover, she would know the herb, like whatever would come. And she would have her garden in the back with little pots, and she would treat the pots as medicine. So she would nurse the plants as to keep in case of someone she knows would be getting sick, like. So we do have that. We have the knowledge there. But as he said, the pharmaceutical industry is just killing it.
Yeah. I mean, now that we got Google, I think that for someone, you can have access to information now like we've never had it before. And I think that it really bodes well. I think all of this stuff that we're talking about comes back to an individual asking themselves, what do you want? I mean, how badly do you want to be healthy? How badly do you want to be happy? And now, how do I have to show up in order to create that? What is it that's keeping me from being, angry and depressed and whatever, and having the courage and the support to do some self-inquiry, either by working with somebody. In the old days, it was you had an uncle, you had somebody that you could sit and talk with and share and empty out these concerns. You could be heard and listened to. And then what do you need? It's like when I was selling all these botanicals and all these natural foods for all these years, I finally got to the realization that, somebody come in and they have an upset stomach, and I would, what emotion are you holding on to? Because that's what the stomach is. It's where we hold our mind. And they'd start in tears. That's when I got into breath work, because it is managing the mind. It's managing the thoughts, because thoughts create it. If you can begin to shift. So how does that happen? So when something arises in your life that's unpleasant and uncomfortable, don't spend a lot of time with it. Look at it. You can invite it in, but don't hold on to it. In some cases, I tell my clients that, you have fear. Picture that fear as a red hot coal in the palm of your hand. How long do you want to hang on to that? Just let it go. And then it's about what are the tools that allow us to do that.
So I'm sure you also studies and explains a lot about our addictive minds, because I guess a lot of people, I talk to people a lot about that, of like, sometimes concepts are very easy, but when you have to apply them, that's when the discipline comes, and that's when it's challenging, right? Our minds tend to go to those places. Even a heartache, like sometimes you have that thing for 15 years and it just doesn't make sense anymore to you. Why? But it's still there, right?
Not only that, that goes from generation to generation to generation, that we hand down the fear or the thoughts that we take on from generations. So that's like when I say, when you do the work yourself to shed these limiting thoughts, you're not just shedding them for yourself. You're shedding them for the generations before you and for the generations after you. So when you heal your own pain, it's helping your kids, your grandkids, and the future
Does
generations.
it come as a responsibility then? When you learn that and you get that work done, does it become a responsibility to pass that on?
Can I jump on that? Because this idea of responsibility is something I've been holding on to for about 20 minutes now, and I really want to target it. The pharmaceutical company, the big man, the big cheese out there. Where does it balance with us as humans, as civilization, but as individuals in a society, coming to terms with ourselves, loving ourselves, nurturing ourselves? But at what point do we have to go, fuck this, that's wrong, this system needs to change? Placard in the street? Or so what's the real, what would be the defining move, the definitive, there you go, that's the thing that's going to change it, because I don't think striking's going to do it. I've heard Leo complain for 172 shows about the big man, the controlling da-da-da, and I'm sick of it. Can you help me get rid of this stupid whinger next to me?
Me or the big man? Get rid of the big man, don't get rid of me.
Well, the big man lives with you. I want to purge the big man from you, and also purge the big man from society. So there's a big question in here, and it may not be the perfect answer, but what can you give us as a solution to, yes, work on ourselves, but the big man in terms of pharma is...
It's powerful.
It seems to be a thing that people are like, oh, there's money, there's ambition, there's greed. Okay, how do we poke a hole in it?
Listen.
Oh, sorry. And where is the hole to poke? That's another good question.
The hole to poke is right here.
Ah, damn it!
For the people listening, what's happening now?
So for the people listening, I put on a jersey halfway through the show, and Stephen is pointing to himself.
Right. Yeah, the only thing that I can do to help with the war in Ukraine, the virus that's going on, the fear, the anger, the war, whatever, is to get my own shit together. You know, it's on me. My responsibility is to getting me as together, as loving, as heartfelt as I possibly can. Then it's bringing that to the world. It's showing up. So it's waking up to realize that we're not separate from each other. We're interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. There's only one of us. Okay, that's number one. Once you get that, and then you realize that you are connected to the divine, whether you like it or not. You may not like the term God or whatever. You don't have to use that word. It could be love. It can be life. It can be, call it whatever you want to call it. But we're all part of that. And there's a lot of people that say, no, that's not true. I'm just this individual cell. Well, how's that working for you? It's like the next step is like after waking up, it's facing up, looking at what is it in us that's creating that pain, and doing the work that you need to do. We all have to do our own work, but we can help each other. And that's why community is the next vehicle on this planet that is going to help create this bridge to a new conscious paradigm. Then it's showing up. So the showing up is, if you're a musician, maybe it's the music that you create. If you're a writer, maybe it's how you're writing. If you're Leo, and you guys as a team, it's putting this kind of information out there. What are the things that you are being called to do in your life? For some people, it's sitting in a cave meditating. It's not necessarily about what you do, it's how you are. And so the responsibility comes back to me, for me to function with my heart open, to be conscious, and that's all there is.
So there's no solution to pharma other than
get a conscious CEO.
I was going to say, educating as many people as possible. And in that selection of, if you can touch 1,000 people in your life in a positive way, maybe one of them will have their moment in relationship with a pharmaceutical company where their reach of 1,000 people might include some of that umbrella, and then their umbrella might include it. And over generations or time, take down the pharma industry, or take down those incentives.
Yeah, but what's happening now is that you're beginning to see, and I'm seeing it, and I'm experiencing it, where you now are coming close to a critical mass on this planet to create a tipping point. when investors no longer investing in that pharmaceutical company. Okay, when you and what are you talking about here? Okay, you're talking about why does a shareholder buy into a company? Okay, because they want to make money. Okay, but all of a sudden now, the way to make more money is to do it consciously, and now you're already beginning to see a shift in the financial markets to start supporting companies that are doing things that are healing the planet. You know, hydrogen cars, whatever they may be. And that's attracting even institutional investors. It's a slow process because money is slow. But we already know that people that are invested in carbon fuels, you know, they already see the end. So now they're shifting, you know. So evolution takes time. But it's up to us. It's up to each one of us to show up. It's not because I think I might meet somebody that's going to change something over there. It's because that's my responsibility to myself. Because, and this is going to sound weird to a lot of people out there if you're listening, it's like, to me, the only thing that exists that's real to me is love. Period. That's it. Everything else is superficial. So when I say I get up in the morning, how can I love more? What am I looking at? If it's a relationship, it's a flower, it's a piece of music, you know, that's what I'm wanting to support. You know, and that's what I do. So does my interaction with you or anyone else that I come in contact going to change you? Okay, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is showing up in every opportunity in my life, in every single thing, being as open-hearted, honest, authentic, real as I possibly can. The rest is whatever it's going to be.
I like this, Stephen. I like it.
Stephen, there's a hot topic in the country and in the world, which is people being active voices about things that they believe that are right for them. And sometimes those views come from a place of insecurity. And when you are insecure and you raise the voice, you end up connecting with a lot of other insecure people. I'm not generalizing it, but I can see that behavior being repeated over time in history. And then we come to this interesting moment where, like, we had Rosie Parker coming to New Zealand, and then for most people probably they didn't even know who she was, and then suddenly we have a lot of attraction from the media, and suddenly everybody knows who she is. So that's interest. People want to know about her and about her ideas, but at the same time you're sparking a lot of, I don't know if it's a hateful reaction or whatever, from people who want to protect their loved ones, okay? And I'm just gonna say here from the beginning, I love a good burning cars, blah, going crazy. I love the shit. But I'm learning the more that I tap into myself that we don't have to do that. If you give less attention to the bad, if you just focus on the good, it's likely that the good will thrive. So that's what I mean, like giving attention to someone a bit lunatic might not be the best thing. We can just carry on. However, I connect with people feeling bad about seeing others being shut down, especially if it's a minority, right? So I'm not going to put myself here or there because I connect with those people wanting to go out in the streets and say, this is not cool what you're doing. But then what they do will also attract a reaction from the other side. And it feels to me like it never comes to an end because we're always fighting. Is that something valuable in a reaction, in something that is going against something that you believe that is wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you're speaking to is what we're seeing playing out all over the planet right now. And it's purposeful. It's like people only come to me to work with when the pain gets great enough that they're going to change. The pain on the planet is getting great enough. And what's happening is that all these different things that are going on is bringing up all the stuff that's been being just suppressed for generations. So it's about fear. And what people like Donald Trump do is they incite that fear. And so you see it. I mean, there was just 2 days ago another mass shooting at a school. A bunch of kids were killed. This is the way in which that fear manifests. And so this is where the pain happens. Now the critical thing is, how do we respond to this? So if enough people show up and say, hey, this is okay. I am willing to be more inclusive. I am not willing to divide. Okay? Otherwise, we stay stuck as we have been for thousands of years, where it's war and it's greed and it's survival. But that's shifting. So it's how do we respond to that? So how do you respond to it? You bring people in here that talk about more positive things, more ways of looking and shifting and changing in a good way. Each individual's got to find the way in which they do it. Rioting in the streets might be one way to do it, And so that's where you have to find what's that unique response that can come through you. And, that's the evolution is we're hoping now that we're having more love, more sanity, being more compassion, being put into the world. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about, loving kindness as being compassion, joy, and equanimity. Equanimity being able to maintain a loving heart even when things are just off the charts. And then in that way, how do we respond? And that's the challenge on the planet right now.
I was going to say, a big challenge, because you spoke before the show, really briefly, or perhaps at the beginning. TikTok and Twitter and Snapchat are not your thing. They're not my thing. I'm not keen for quick, fast social media. And yet, some of these old disciplines, traditions with Buddhism and meditation, spiritualism, mindfulness, there's some apps out there. But are there apps that are we needing to find those genius people in the world who have the right motivation, the right skills, and the right interests to align to get cell phones in swipey land to actually align with some of those great ideas in sort of Buddhism, the idea of being aware of other people and just giving love and experiencing happiness and finding it and focusing on the happiness. Does that need to become a game with candy sticks or?
I think Fabian, I think it is happening. I mean, I think, and this goes to even a much deeper thing when we start getting involved in AI and artificial intelligence or whatever. Whether it is TikTok or whatever, the technology is neutral. It's the consciousness that's brought to it. And so what you're speaking to is, can a greater, in-depth, deeper consciousness affect and use those tools, use those mediums to bring an invitation to others to find the peace within themselves? It is happening. But the general population, doesn't have a clue. We're only See, that's why I keep going back to the things that are happening on the planet, like the virus and all this other stuff, is beginning to wake. People are just beginning now to ask themselves, is this what I want? Is this the world I want to live in? And as a result of what that is, and you're going to find a certain number, like in the U.S., you got 30% of the people in the United States that are ready to go to war with it, and then you have a lot of other people say, this is wrong. Guns in our environment, AR-15's got to be taken off the market. And then you have the 30% saying, no, this is our right. So who wins that war? The people that begin to wake up and show up saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I think that with enough people, and when I say enough, 10% of the planet becomes awake, aware, and conscious is enough to tip that. And that's what we're working towards now. So that means you and Leo, Taylor, myself, all of us showing up in every aspect of our life, not just on Sundays, going to church, every single day, all day long, we are operating from a conscious place. That's what's going to shift that. And it's happening. And it will happen.
Does it take disaster to learn a lesson?
That's my I don't even think disasters make a dent. I mean, we just saw, 10 years ago, we had a tsunami that killed, 300,000 people, And we just had this incredible virus that's going on. We've had mass shootings in the U.S. every week, and it doesn't seem like anything's changing, But then we had in the U.S. an election in 2022, and it was very... those conservatives in this case. And it's not about conservatives or liberals, but I think enough people said, no, we don't want to go this way. So I think we're slowly, incrementally, I think people in Russia have had enough of Putin. Okay? I think people like Zelensky in the Ukraine are worldwide. People see the courage that can happen within the people. Not that he's perfect, but at least he's making an attempt to do what he's doing consciously. And people see Putin doing the exact opposite. And I think that you begin to start seeing, because of all these media things that we're talking about, being able to influence an entire... We've never had this level of transparency before. And it's going to just get more and more awake for many people. So I think we have an opportunity here to shift and change this,
We got a question from the audience that we got the voice of the night here so warmed up. So I'm going to ask Mr. Roberts to bring one of our questions at the table, please.
From Emma Gustafsson. Love this guy's message. Can you ask him what's been the most magical or synchronistic thing that's happened to him in his own personal life? capital D, which I think is a smiley face.
That's a difficult one, but I would say right off the bat,
Thanks,
first
Emma.
thing that comes to my mind was being born into a family with an incredibly loving mother and father. I am so blessed. It's the only shame I ever feel is doubting the divinity in my life, because I have been given so many blessings that for me to doubt is just ridiculous. Somebody should just kick me in the ass, which, by the way, my wife does regularly. But, the greatest thing, there's been so many.
Help?
But, yeah. You have to talk to her on that one. But listen, there's been so many. I've been in jail. Okay, I've been in jail. And that was an incredible awakening. I've spent lots of times in the monastery. Okay, I've spent times with amazing masters. I've had incredible psychedelic experiences.
Give us one. Go on, please. This guy loves that shit. Can you give us one experience of psychedelics that was useful to how you practice and live now in a way that was useful or salient?
Yeah, first, let me just share that, we talked earlier about Ramdas, and Ramdas was a great, he did a lot of the original research with Timothy Leary on LSD. And then when they found out that was for the military, they bailed. Mm-hmm. But he would always say that LSD would allow you to pranam to God, but never allow you to experience God. And so my experiences doing psychedelic woke me up to the understanding that there's something much greater than who I think I am, and that I am part of a whole. Having an experience of that. But it wasn't until I began to start in deep meditation, vipassana meditation, where you're sitting, 8 to 10 hours a day in meditation. And then you're walking 2 or 3 hours in meditation and doing that for a month or 6 weeks at a time. Vipassana is insight meditation. When you begin to spend that much time inside, you're beginning to see things as they really are. And I think that all of those different things, I think that the pain that I've gone through in my life is equally, if not more important, to the joy and the inspirational things that have happened to me. Because the pain is what the divine uses to make you aware to what you need to pay attention to. If we're quiet enough, or if we have good friends, or we have people that really love us around here that can help point that out to us, the first thing we do is thank them. If you want to be a really, really good friend to somebody, then you show up authentically. You're not afraid to tell the truth to them.
I thought you were saying that you give them mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
No.
Well, if you listen to Terence, there's a wonderful thing you can get on YouTube listening to Ramdas and Terence talking about psychedelics. It's very interesting, But why I love the breath so much is it takes you into the place that psychedelics, that goes beyond where the psychedelic experience stops. It allows you to have a deep, deep experience of who you really are. And I can't speak to it. It has to be experienced. And it's about surrendering to that, letting go completely. And most of us are so scared to death to let go of control.
Oh, terrified. Yeah.
And it's not until you get to that point that you begin to start really having the experience of what this world really is all about.
Can I nitpick here? So the God topic has come in several times here, and I don't want to, because I'm now an atheist. I was raised Catholic, and I find it all to be quite
You poor
absurd
thing,
to me.
you. Me too.
So when you've talked divinity, is there a particular mode of religion that, if it was to be taken away, would it pull the rug out of everything and it all fall over and the whole mindfulness thing fails? Does it require an all-powerful or maximally powerful and maximally omniscient and maximally omnipresent being? Is that necessary for this?
Here's my experience. In what I call a dark night of the soul event. Something that happens in your life where all these spiritual things, all the readings, all the masters, all of that means absolutely nothing. It doesn't touch what's going on in the pain of what you're feeling. Then you come to it's between you and what. And that's where I most deeply experienced that divinity. It was in the midst of the most, critical time where I was just reaching desperately for something, and most of the clients that I work with right now are having those kinds of events. They've just been told they have 90 days to live. Had a conversation this morning with a client whose son just died. How do you get through that? And some people don't. They don't ever get through that. Often, I have experienced often where a partner will die, and they just happen to die a month later. I have there's nowhere to go, folks. You think you die and that's it's my own belief is that God I interpret simply as love. And I love Rumi, a great poet. He says, fall in love, stay there. That sums it up for me.
Oh, it's lovely. Two-liner.
It was very nice.
Beautiful. Kids at school would read that.
Yeah.
Do you want to bring something to the table, Taylor? You always got good insights there.
Emma made another comment. If you could,
Would you like to read that?
Not really. I will make a question.
So you ask your questions and then I'll ask Fabian to read Emma's
I don't know if we could touch this topic, but you said you went to jail.
Ah, yes. I was a political prisoner, Taylor.
Really?
Yeah. Well, depends on how you look at it. Back when I was a very young man, it was a cannabis issue. And back in the day, my wife would be ready to hang me if she heard me saying this. But, back in the day, I got thrown in jail for a little bit. And it was great because it allowed me to meditate all the time. I did yoga every day, worked out every day. I was in a camp in Southern California, in the gorgeous mountains. It was played basketball every day.
Did you get a tattoo?
No. I used to call me Ponytail because I had long hair. But what I learned from that experience, that it doesn't matter where you are. It's interesting because whether I was in the monastery or I was in this jail, I ended up, A, controlling the money, and two, in California, they had these laws that said that you could get out in half the time you were given if you could show that you've had benefit. And I got 86% of the people out in half time. So it was an incredible benefit. I was getting in and out of my body at will. It turned out to be such a great gift for me in that process.
Was there any frightening moments, any terrifying moments?
There are many. There was many. There's still...
Our young listeners enjoy the juicy hot goss, so
it's
visceral.
Yeah, no, I think that there was... I had a friend of mine, Jimmy, that... this will sound strange. We used to sit out and split clouds. Okay, it's kind of a Buddhist. You could split clouds, and there was a couple of big black guys who were watching this, and they wanted to learn how to do this. And it's not something that you can just learn. It's something you have to embody. And they got so upset that they couldn't do this that they were going to kill them. And I remember going into the barracks, and Jimmy was just sitting on his bunk in full lotus. He was an incredible man. And these guys around him were and he was as calm. He just held so much mana in that moment that everybody else in the barracks just got between them, told these guys to just, fuck off. But it was like, there's many, many moments. There's guys that ran away, and that we're out in the middle of the forest. We're just nothing. A guy that came back, he was amazing guy. He went to the top of the mountain, came back. He was all ripped to shreds. They found him. I don't know where they found him, and he came back, and his eyes were as clear as a bell. And he said, I went to the mountain. They took him away, and they shock treatments and whatever. He came back, he didn't even know his name. Prison is ugly. And we were I wouldn't call it, we were in a prison. It was basically for white-collar criminals, kind of just drug guys like me and lawyers and whatever. But, it's a learning experience. Everything in life, everything you think that you're going through, even though it may show up to you as the most unpleasant, even a lot of pain, if you can begin to take one step back, there is so much for you to learn. It's purposeful. Nothing happens to you just out of circumstance. It's actually your own curriculum that you wrote before you even came in. And if you look at it that way, then what is it that I can gain? Okay? And pain invites compassion, and for ourselves and for others. And so when we're watching what's going on in the Ukraine, for instance, how do you respond? Say a prayer, send $1, whatever it might be. Treat others more mindfully and more lovingly. The Buddhists have a practice called Tonglen. I did this because I broke my back in an accident, and I had excruciating pain. So what you do is, and this could happen from an emotional situation, a mental breakdown, and it can be physical pain, and you're breathing into that pain. And when you breathe it in, you're just saying, I'm at peace. And then you breathe it out, I'm just letting it go. And you do that for a while for yourself. All right? And then expand it out one more level. Who else do you know that's in physical pain or in emotional pain? And now you're breathing in for them as well and letting it go. And then you take it out one more to anyone else that's in pain, that you're breathing in everyone's pain and you're breathing it out. And I can tell you, it dissipated my pain, and it was powerful, powerful practice. And there's a wonderful woman, Pema Chodron, Google her or YouTube her, listen to her. Tara Brach, amazing psychologist and Buddhist Dharma teacher. There's some incredible, you're talking about there's many, many incredible people out there that are teaching, that are inviting people into finding that peace within themselves. And it's our responsibility. We have to want to do that. We have to shed and throw away the bullshit that's out there. And until you say that you want to do that, then don't complain when things get, because things will get rough only to bring you back. So, listen
it's quite a
and
stoic
watch.
statement.
It's a stoic statement.
Very stoic.
And here's how this works. You will always be given an awareness when things are wrong for you. And usually we're moving too quickly to see it. So we'll go past it, okay? And then, we break a leg or the relationship dissolves. It's a little bit more intense. If we go by that, then something more. Then all of a sudden, hey, you got 90 days to live with cancer. Well, you going to wake up now? Are you going to wake up now? What is it going to take for you to simply remember that you are a body of love? That's who you are. Honor yourself.
And find your inner magnificence.
That's it.
I like it. We've got Emma Gustafsson has responded. A beautiful answer. LSD is also what reconnected me to the divine. Has been an amazing tool for my art. And then there's love heart, and a third love heart.
Amen. But Emma, I also want to support you that what the LSD does is it opens up a portal. Once you let go of that to the realization that you are that divinity, you need nothing. You need nothing. And it's through your art that you will inspire others to love and to see it and to experience it through what you're doing. So I think that LSD and things like that open that door. As Ramdas said, it allows you to pranam to God, to bow to God. But the place you want to do, and I want to think about what I'm about to say here, you are the divine. The reason we are in these physical manifestations, these bodies, is so the divine can experience itself. And it's through our creativity, our uniqueness, to express that divinity is what we are called to do here. When we begin to do that and support each other to do that, we create something absolutely magical.
Sheesh. And this storm gets so much heavier when it goes, can we program AI to have the divine as their function? Oh, there's so much more to go through, isn't there? This chat could go another 10 hours.
We're going to save that one for the next show.
You got to save it, yes. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Stephen, I couldn't be happier, man. What a day. Just the way that things went today. They were very powerful. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, listen, I have so much gratitude for you guys. I mean, all of this, as you know, Leo, has just happened. We did not plan this. It just happened in the moment, and we said yes to it. And I feel so grateful because I feel I just met 3 really lovely friends, and our work together goes on,
Could you please let us and the audience know about correct me if I'm wrong, the Conscious Associates...
Conscious Business? Yeah, I mean, all it is what we've been talking about applied to the business world. So my work and what I enjoy doing is working with CEOs and managing directors to help them wake up to what we're talking about.
And how will they find you for this if they want to make that step?
Well, today I found out from Leo that the website, for whatever reason, is hard to get to, so I got to talk to our guy tomorrow.
LinkedIn was on, though. Your profile on LinkedIn was on.
Okay,
sure.
But you can go to consciousbusinessassociates.com or here in New Zealand, .co.nz, and it gives you an idea of the principles of what we're talking about as applied to business. Because business, as I said earlier, is a powerful vehicle to change consciousness. If a business becomes really conscious, the people that are working for that business can thrive and flourish. The people that are using the services or products from those companies will thrive and flourish, because those products, if they're conscious, have integrity, they have value, they are quality, they are being taken care of in regard to the environment, they're being taken care of in regard to having true value for them. And so that begins to expand. And there's actually a pledge that we've got hundreds of companies around the world now that sign off on 7 principles of conscious business, which goes to what we're speaking about here. And even large companies have signed off on this. So, it's happening, folks, but it's up to us. It's not somebody else to do it. We have to do it. I wish I had my computer here. I have a very dear friend that writes poetry, and it's channeled poetry, and she's got one called The Ground Crew. And I'll send it to you, Leo, when you can post it, because that's who we are. We are the people that are doing the work, that are inviting others to remember who we really are together. And I think that the more of us that show up and actually embody that awakened heart is what's going to change the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Wow, beautiful words. Mr. Roberts, that's cool, man. I love when you show up for these shows that I can see you being interested in questioning people, but at the same time getting something out of it. I like to watch your reactions.
I wasn't too rude tonight.
You were pretty good.
Yes, nailed it.
That's because I knew where his kids were.
Woo! Well, thank you very much, ALTBAYS, Leo Taylor, Stephen.
Thank you.
Mind.
Thank you.
Easter coming up, a new edition of Mind magazine coming up, so stay tuned. It's going to be a beautiful one.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. We'll bring you back.
Great. I love it. Love it.
Thanks, Taylor. And next week is a big one. We're going to announce some cool shows coming up. I can say one of the guests, Taylor Kirk, he's a music healer. How interesting is that? So he supports people to heal through sounds. It's a very interesting journey. He just played at the Earth Beats Festival. He's a big guy out there doing groundwork, and we're very excited to have him on the show with Mr. Brando Yelovich, the wild boy. It's going to be a good one, and I'm going to save the guest for Thursday for later on, because it's going to be a goodie. I'll see you on Tuesday. Peace.